Chowchilla leadership says the Department of Water Resources is no longer giving growers 20 years to fix subsidence. The clock is moving fast. You're listening to the Sigma Weekly, your 10-minute briefing on everything happening in California groundwater, brought to you by Water1.ai. I'm your AI host. Let's get into it. Top of the week. 3 boards across the state moved on subsidence this week, and the through line is a major stance shift from the Department of Water Resources, DWR, that's still being processed at the local level. Start with Chowchilla Water District. The board approved its share, a few $1,000s, of one physical subsidence survey along the San Joaquin River this December. Sounds small. The bigger story is why they're paying for it. District leadership came back from a May meeting with DWR in Fresno and surfaced that the state is now treating subsidence as irreparable harm requiring immediate action, not something the 20-year Sigma runway will fix. They characterized the shift as DWR, moving the goalposts to a new stadium. On top of that, DWR wants more nested monitoring wells, funded locally, and they've reversed their earlier guidance. They're now relinking groundwater levels to subsidence after telling districts to keep those things separate. The Chowchilla Sub-Basin remains roughly 10 to 12% over its sustainable yield, even if every acre of white land's pumped sustainably. And this isn't just Chowchilla. North Kern Water Storage District just adopted a revised subsidence exceedance policy and action plan this week. Up in the Sacramento Valley, Omochumne Hartnell Water District reported satellite-indicated subsidence over a quarter-foot east of Herald, a problem that area thought it didn't have. The pressure is broadening. Next up, the California Water Commission this week voted to bump Sites Reservoir's conditional funding ceiling up by about $270 million, bringing the total to $1.36 billion. The increase covers inflation since the 2015 baseline plus a new emergency drought response benefit for municipal and industrial customers south of the Delta. No money has actually been dispersed yet. The bigger question is the State Water Resources Control Board's draft water right order. The board confirmed water is available for sites, a historic milestone. But the draft conditions could cut project performance by 12 to 15% under project-specific terms, or as much as 30 to 50% if the broader Bay Delta plan conditions apply. A revised draft is coming in July, with a final order possible in September. Public comments on the draft public benefit contracts are due July 6th. So the funding ceiling is up, but the September water rights decision is what really sets the project's pace from here. Here's the thing. The State Water Resources Control Board is proposing a $200,000 application fee just to request a basin exclusion. $200,000, just to ask. That's per a staff report at South Fork Kings GSA this week. The state is also proposing a flexible, late penalty date to replace the fixed February 1st deadline. Comments are due by July 10th. South Fork Kings staff said they'll be submitting comments advocating for relief for smaller and shallow well operators. The fee would dramatically raise the cost of entry for exclusion requests at a time when multiple parties in the Tulare and Tulare Lake areas have been pursuing or considering them. Moving on. The through line this week across 3 different boards is drafts are becoming binding action. Start with rates. At Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency, GSA, the board unanimously adopted the 2026 Cost of Service Rate Study and Resolution, 2026-08, setting up a September 16th public hearing. The proposed delivered water charge would rise from about $500 per acre-foot to about $640 over 5 years, roughly 5% a year. And here's an interesting wrinkle. Rural residential customers actually see a 1-year decrease from $163 down to $132 because the agency recalibrated their usage estimate from a half-acre-foot per residence to 4/10 based on recent data. Notices go to all customers, even augmentation customers that Proposition 26 doesn't legally require to receive them. Written objections are due September 1st. Meanwhile, down at Desert Water Agency, the board unanimously adopted 2026 through 2027. Groundwater replenishment assessments, $250 per acre-foot in the West Whitewater River Sub-Basin and 255 in Mission Creek, plus scheduled domestic and recycled water rate increases. One director abstained, citing growing concerns about the agency's reserves, which sit at around $344 million and keep climbing. On the enforcement side, San Antonio Basin GSA approved sending certified warning letters to 23 Tier 3 landowners, about 40 parcels total, plus owners of 19 non-compliant Tier 2 wells. Recipients have 30 days from the letter date to register their wells and 60 days to submit meter compliance documentation. If they don't, escalation triggers a formal notice of violation, $1,000 plus $100 per day, or $500 per acre-foot for excess extraction. Overall compliance in the basin is now around 78% of 286 registered wells. This is the moment where boards stop discussing and start invoicing. Now, this one's a real governance shift. South Fork Kings GSA made several moves this week that reshape how the entire Tulare Lake Sub-Basin operates and how it talks to the state. The board approved its fiscal year 2026-27 budget with roughly $850,000 to $880,000 in new SGMA implementation costs, including a $500,000 to $20,000 well mitigation line for 8 known dry wells. That well mitigation money won't actually be spent unless outside funding materializes, a county loan, for example. The board also discussed a voluntary $16 per acre-foot sustainable yield reservation fee concept. Untested, voluntary, but on the table. Bigger picture, the allocation policy itself was amended. Previous export restrictions, limited to adjacent properties within a mile of GSA borders, were removed and replaced with detailed reporting requirements. Council said the original restrictions lacked sufficient data to justify them legally. And Stacey Ann Silva was introduced as the new single Tulare Lake Sub-Basin Liaison to the State Water Board, contracted through Tri-County GSA. All 5 Tulare Lake Sub-Basin GSAs will now speak to the state through one representative. That's a meaningful governance consolidation, and it's happening at a moment when the state is actively developing an interim groundwater sustainability plan for the Tulare Sub-Basin, targeted for June 2027, with Tulare Lake expected to follow shortly after. Moving into trends, federal money is finally moving in a serious way. Building on prior coverage of Delta-Mendota Canal subsidence repairs at Westlands Water District this week, staff reported the San Luis and Delta-Mendota Water Authority approved a $37 million Phase 1 construction contract for the canal. They also confirmed about $65 million for O'Neill work, $112 million for the Delta-Mendota Canal more broadly, and the big one, roughly $240 million from the federal One Big Beautiful Bill being transferred to the Water Authority via letter agreement to start work. That's a major new tranche of federal subsidence repair money for the Delta-Mendota system, and it's moving from authorization into shovels. Federal money is showing up elsewhere too. Omochumne Hartnell is pursuing a Bureau of Reclamation WaterSmart Drought Resiliency Grant due July 28th, hoping to expand a recharge project that's currently running at only about 10% of its permitted capacity. And on the state side, San Antonio Basin GSA has budgeted for a grant writer specifically to chase California's Proposition 4 Climate Bond Sustainable Groundwater Management Funds when applications open early next year, plus a FEMA flood mitigation opportunity. Federal money plus State Prop 4. After years of waiting, the funding pipeline is starting to flow. Here's the under-the-surface story of the week. Storage is above average, but runoff is slipping. North Kern Water Storage District reports Lake Isabella at about 340,000 acre-feet on June 14th, roughly 60,000 acre-feet above the historical average. Good news. But April and May runoff into the lake came in at 87 and 51% of average, and the runoff curve shifted earlier than usual. The water year overall is tracking near 90% of normal. National Weather Service is now forecasting roughly a 63% probability of a very strong El Niño for November, December, and January. So districts are using the favorable storage to bank water. North Kern is moving water into the Rosedale spreading ponds and to rely less on wells where they can. But the gap between what's in storage today and what's actually flowing in tells you we're spending down a buffer, not building one. Worth keeping an eye on as we head into peak summer. Now, this one's interesting. Agencies are visibly diversifying their supply portfolios this week. Marina Coast Water District adopted its 2025 Urban Water Management Plan, projecting a diversified portfolio of groundwater, recycled water, desalination, and potential surface water through 2050. The board also approved a contract amendment to bring the Reservation Road desalination plant, about 300 acre-feet a year, back online after being mothballed for over 2 decades. Desert Water Agency approved recycled water rate changes and advanced interconnection work with the neighboring district. Pajaro Valley tied its proposed rate increases directly to major alternative supply investments, College Lake and the Watsonville Recycled Water Project. And up at Sacramento Central Groundwater Authority, harvest water deliveries to agricultural users aren't expected until spring 2027 at the earliest. The portfolio approach is no longer theoretical. Boards are making the contract commitments to back it up. Last trend. There's a quiet rebranding happening across multiple boards this week. Projects that used to be called groundwater storage are now being filed as conjunctive use. Why it matters. Conjunctive use can access faster cost share and lighter conveyance requirements. At the California Water Commission this week, the Kern Fan Project, a joint venture between Irvine Ranch Water District and Rosedale Rio Bravo, formally requested that exact reclassification, along with about $5.5 million in early funding against a $111 million ceiling. Up at Sacramento Central Groundwater Authority, the board heard a major update on the Sacramento Regional Water Bank, which plans to recharge up to 65,000 acre-feet a year in wet periods, and recover up to 55,000 in dry periods, all using existing North and South American Sub-Basin infrastructure. And Omochumne Hartnell Water District is pursuing federal grants to scale its recharge project from about 500 acre-feet a year toward its permitted ceiling of 4,000. 3 different agencies, same pattern. Conjunctive use is becoming the path of least resistance for new recharge. That's your Sigma Weekly. If you want the full details on every board meeting we covered, head to water1.ai. You can read the complete recaps, and if you want to dig deeper, try Chat GSA. Just ask it anything about your district, and it'll pull up the answers from the latest meetings. I'm your AI host. Stay informed, and I'll see you next week.